Chapter 647 to 649. Damn! With each passing second, Danzo's countenance on the altar became increasingly contorted. He appeared to be drowning, frantically grasping at anything he could find in the hope of finding a life-saving straw that did not exist. He shouted loudly, and his roar was like a low-pitched roar that didn't sound like a human voice, but rather like the roar of an evil spirit in the netherworld, which caused the hairs on the backs of others' necks to stand on end. Danzo stumbled when it came to the evolution of the soul, and as a result, the fusion of all the Kekkei Genkai in his body came to a halt. Observing the pair of Mangekyu Sharingan in his eye sockets reveals this fact. Sharingan is the dojutsu that represents the soul, and the pair of Mangekyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets also represents the ritual's progression at this time. The presence of different chakra natures in his body, the efficiency of fusion of all those different chakra natures, and the speed of fusion of all those different chakra natures are all directly reflected by the pair of Mangekyu Sharingan, and it wouldn't be incorrect to say that that pair of Mangekyu Sharingan in his eyes is the most accurate indicator of the ritual's progress. And based on Homusubi's observations on the newly evolved pair of Mangekyu Sharingan, the merging of all the chakra natures in his body has actually ceased. Is it the end? She sighed as she realized this. At this point, even she isn't sure whether the sigh is one of disappointment or one of relief. Homusubi couldn't decide whether she should be relieved that the ceremony had come to an end, or if she should be disappointed that it had come to an end. After all, Danzo's chances of succeeding in the ritual were as low as 2%, yet that little chance did exist. If Danzo had gotten extremely lucky and managed to successfully absorb all of the Kekkei Genkai in this ritual with the goddess of luck's blessing, he would have posed a significant threat to Amatsukami and the shinobi world, especially since he now has a pair of Mangekyu Sharingan with unknown and mysterious abilities, as well as Hashirama cells and the other 5 Kekkei Genkai in his body. With so many powerful Kekkei Genkai, if Danzo does not die, he will undoubtedly cause difficulties that Amatsukami does not like to deal with at this time. Homusubi, who had been frightened up until now, began to conclude the complete procedure after inhaling a choking breath. Let's see. Chimera Jutsu has improved and the ceremony's intended features appear to be in good working order. This time the preview was more successful than I had anticipated. However, the issue of Chimera Bud's unexpected hostile behavior and Danzo's loss of control over it is something to consider. Maybe I should conduct some investigation on this. To be honest, Homusubi is rather content with results. The first and second stages of the ritual, which comprised devouring and fusion, went off without a hitch. Everything virtually went according to Homusubi's expectations, and the entire process was exceedingly. This clearly indicates that the advancements in Chimera Jutsu, as well as the ritual ceremony's arrangement, are quite good, and that Kuroto may employ a similar design for his own ascendants. Homusubi came up with these ideas while standing calmly in the same spot, waiting for Danzo to die entirely so she could get her hands on the pair of Mangekyu Sharingan in Danzo's eyes. Not everyone, however, was as peaceful and quiet as Homusubi because of the failure of the ritual. When the root shinobi inside the volcano realized Danzo was likely to perish, they were concerned. "Orochimaru, do something!" Danzo's chief researcher exclaimed as he hurried towards Orochimaru. "You must come up with a plan to rescue Hokage-sama's life." "Just wait and watch," murmured Orochimaru, who didn't blink for a second and kept his gaze fixed on the ritual altar. Homusubi grimaced as she heard Orochimaru's comments. Anyone with perceptive eyes can see that Danzo's situation is dire and that saving him is nearly impossible. Orochimaru, on the other hand, stated these remarks with such serenity. This is unusual. Homusubi could think of 2 reasons for Orochimaru's composure when speaking such statements. To begin with, Orochimaru, like her, knows exactly why Danzo faltered and failed. As a result, he is unsurprised and has calmly accepted the reality. Second, Orochimaru is likely to have something up his sleeve that he hasn't used yet. Homusubi believes that the first possibility is not the case here, implying that the second option is more plausible and that the ritual has not yet been completed as she thought initially. And her hunch turned out to be true. At this point, Danzo, who was urgently attempting to stay alive, came to a halt, looked disoriented, and whispered, What's going on? Where am I? Homusubi frowned and whispered in amazement as she gazed at Danzo. Is it what I believe it to be? Danzo's soul was defeated by the other souls in his body, and he now has no control over it? Homusubi can be certain that these words were not spoken by Shimura Danzo, because the tone of voice and the way of speaking were both different from what she was used to. Orochimaru grinned, then swiftly weaved the hand gestures and screamed, "Kai!" as Homusubi was stunned. A series of black symbols erupted out of Danzo's flesh in an instant, and they spread all over his body in the blink of an eye. Curse seal? When did he put it in Danzo's body? Is it possible that it happened during the transformation process? Homusubi expressed her skepticism with a whispered remark. These sign markings are plainly familiar to Homusubi. This is Orochimaru's curse seal, which he created utilizing his own chakra and Jugo's DNA makeup that has the power to absorb natural energy dissipated in heaven and earth. And as far as Homusubi could tell, Orochimaru's sole opportunity of implanting the curse on Danzo's body was during the transformation procedure. Because neither Homusubi nor the chief researcher of Root has as much knowledge in the field of body transformation as Orochimaru, effectively supervising all of his actions was a difficult task. Additionally, Danzo's guard was a little down against Orochimaru during the transformation operation, so that was the ideal opportunity for Orochimaru, and in retrospect he did make the most of that perfect opportunity. Now back to the ritual in front. New alterations occurred once the curse seal implanted on Danzo was activated. The pair of Mangekyo Sharingan in Danzo's eye socket began to transform, even though his expression remained a little lethargic. The black inner circles of the metallic gear-like pattern in the scarlet wheel began to gently rotate again, indicating that the fusion of several chakra natures has been re-established, Homusubi screamed in disbelief. She glanced at Orochimaru in astonishment and clicked her tongue in annoyance. I underestimated him. It appears that he devised a solution to the problem of soul fusion. Orochimaru's implanting of such a seal on Danzo is proof of this. However, Orochimaru's approach to solving the problem is barbarous. Destroying everyone's souls isn't the way to go, she reasoned. Orochimaru's strategy is to use natural energy's erosive tendency to dissolve the souls of others by eroding the chakra that bears a person's soul signature. If that particular chakra vanishes, the soul will inevitably vanish as well. Although this strategy works, Homusubi believes it is terribly barbarous and will undoubtedly cause future difficulties, and the ritual's next phase unfolded exactly as Homusubi had predicted. All of the souls in Danzo's body began to erode as natural energy invaded. As a result, the conflict between different souls reduced, and the sluggish ritual progressed once again. As the ritual advanced, the pair of Mangekyo Sharingan in Danzo's eyes began to evolve even further. The pattern changed a little, and the black sections got a little bigger. Those eyes have evolved yet again. Those are the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, muttered Homusubi. From a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan to a pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan this time. And after seeing this sight, Homusubi, who had been able to retain her equanimity up until now, could no longer do so. Never in her wildest dreams could she imagine such a dramatic change of events tonight. The ritual ceremony has now veered off into unpredictable territory. Even Orochimaru was taken aback. He glanced at the pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan with a desperate look in his serpent-like eyes and whispered in shock. It turns out that Mangekyo Sharingan isn't the final phase of Sharingan evolution. There's still another level above. The knowledge related to Mangekyo Sharingan, is a well-kept secret within the Uchiha clan, let alone the rest of the shinobi world. Even within the Uchiha clan, only a few people are aware of these secrets. As a result, despite Orochimaru and Danzo's thirst for the power of Sharingan and Mangekyo Sharingan, none of them is aware of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the ultimate dojutsu of the Uchiha clan. Because Orochimaru is exceedingly vulnerable in front of an Uchiha who has awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, so his research and understanding have been confined to the level of a 3 Tomoe Sharingan, and he knows little to nothing about the Mangekyo Sharingan, let alone the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. But now that Orochimaru has directly witnessed Sharingan's evolution into the Mangekyo Sharingan, and from the Mangekyo Sharingan that doesn't seem to be showing any signs of stopping at all, he keenly felt that Sharingan may evolve again after developing into Mangekyo Sharingan. This discovery astounded him and delighted him at the same time. Unlike Orochimaru, who was startled and happy, Homusubi, who knew more about Sharingan and its latter stages, was concerned at this time. The problem of soul fusion was Danzo's major roadblock to completing the Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual. Homusubi was certain that Danzo would never be able to get through this stumbling block. But, courtesy to Orochimaru, that barrier has been overcome. Although Orochimaru's way of solving the problem was exceedingly violent and might produce additional problems in the future for Danzo, the problem was temporarily solved, and this has substantially boosted Danzo's chances of succeeding in the ritual. And, given that Danzo has also awakened the eternal Mangekyo and possesses the Hashirama cells in his body, along with the 5 Kekkei Genkai, each representing a chakra nature, as such, the chances of him achieving Kekkei Mora are no longer 0, which is a major headache for Homusubi. As Tsukihi was becoming increasingly concerned, she began to see changes in Danzo's body, and upon noticing these changes, the anxious Tsukihi felt a flicker of hope in her heart. Within Danzo's flesh, the yin and yang chakra are growing stronger. Is it possible for those eyes to evolve even after they have evolved into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? The process of unification of different chakra natures in his body can be seen in the alterations in his eyes. For the time being, it can be assumed that because he has awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan and eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the level of yin chakra in his body has greatly increased. And now that Homusubi has felt an increase in the yin and yang chakra in Danzo's body, the fusion of yin and yang chakra is no longer impossible. If the current yin-yang chakra nature fusion continues, Danzo's eyes will most certainly evolve further and transform from the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to the rinnegan. And if Danzo awakens the rinnegan, he will be qualified to attain Kekkei Mora if all of the prerequisites are completed. Homusubi's heart swelled with excitement as she realized this. She is not concerned about the immense problems that will ensue if Danzo achieves Kekkei Mora at this time. Rather, she is relieved that achieving Kekkei Mora in this manner is indeed possible. This is exemplified by the scene on the ritual altar. If all of the prerequisites are met, the upgraded Chimera Jutsu, combined with the Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual designed by Orochimaru and her, can really create gods. Previously, Kuroto had been working tirelessly to achieve Kekkei Mora through Chimera Jutsu, but he was always unsure if it was truly attainable. After all of his guesses are theoretical, and there hasn't been a precedent to verify whether or not that theoretical possibility is possible in reality. As a result, he was constantly worried about whether or not he would be successful. But now that Homusubi has seen Danzo evolve in front of her eyes, she is convinced that achieving Kekkei Mora through Chimera Jutsu is conceivable. Because Kuroto possesses the Tenseigan, his chances of succeeding in the ritual are significantly greater. While Homusubi was relieved and excited, not everyone felt the same way. As Danzo recovered control over his body, he clenched his teeth in rage and growled, "Orochimaru!" As he gazed at Orochimaru, his face was filled with anger and murderous purpose. When confronted with Danzo's murderous purpose, Orochimaru grinned and remarked, without a hint of fear or anxiety in his eyes, "Danzo, you should be grateful to me. You would have died by now if it hadn't been for me." "What the hell did you do to my body?" Danzo exclaimed violently. "Something that helped you get out of that one-way road to hell," Orochimaru said, licking his lips with delight. Danzo's brows narrowed as he considered Orochimaru's statements. And now that he thinks about it, he only regained control of his body after Orochimaru did something. Despite the fact that Danzo doesn't fully comprehend what Orochimaru did, it did assist him. As a result, Danzo kept his cool and said, "Orochimaru, continue assisting me in completing this rite successfully. I'll pardon your mistakes and lavishly reward you once I succeed." The strength of Danzo's soul has increased greatly as a result of the Mangekyo Sharingan's awakening, and the invasion of natural energy via Orochimaru's cursed seal has eroded some parts of the souls of other people in his body. Danzo was able to regain control of his body as a result of these two factors. But it wasn't a simple task. His soul hasn't totally suppressed the other souls that have melded into his body, even now. He has opted not to pursue the topic precisely because he is at the most vital moment of the ritual. "All right," Orochimaru answered, his grin widening. As Orochimaru responded, Danzo pressed his hand on the ground, panting violently, and yelled, "Chakra! I'm in desperate need of more chakra." The more chakra is necessary to move forward in the ritual process, the more chakra is required. Because the eyes in Danzo's eye sockets have evolved into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the chakra supply that had previously sufficed is no longer sufficient. As a result, Danzo's chakra requirements have grown, and he now requires more chakra. "Hokage-sama, the supply is already at the maximum power," Root's top researcher replied blankly in answer to Danzo's order. "If the supply is boosted further, the shinobis outside will..." "They will." "Fool!" Danzo interrupted the chief researcher before he could finish his sentence. "I am the Hokage, the village's leader. Any sacrifice made in my honor is a sacrifice made in the village's name. Furthermore, increase the chakra supply right now." The chief researcher had no choice but to carry out Danzo's instructions. He was well aware that doing so would result in a large number of casualties, but he did it nonetheless because it was Danzo-sama's command. Outside the volcano. "Ah!" With the abrupt surge in transmission power, several shinobi's chakra reserves were quickly depleted, resulting in their instant death, startling all other shinobi in the area. "He passed away! How come you're still absorbing his chakra? Didn't you guys say this was merely a demonstration of a new technology? Then why are people dying here? You scumbags! What the hell are you guys up to?" The Konoha shinobi questioned the Root shinobi after witnessing their companion's terrible demise. When confronted with the furious and enraged questioning of all the Konoha shinobi, the patrolling team's leaders exchanged glances before weaving hand gestures and activating a cursed seal. The bodies of approximately 1,500 shinobis were imprisoned in place as a result of the activation of this new cursed seal, and they were unable to escape the chakra transmission array or take any action in retaliation. "I apologize for what you people are going through," the head of the entire patrol squad remarked, looking at the angry and scared faces of over 1,500 Konoha shinobis. "This, however, is all for Hokage-sama. I can only sacrifice you all for his sake." More than 1,500 Konoha shinobi were bound to the chakra transmission array without being able to put up any opposition, and as a result, they became human-formed chakra batteries under the control of the cursed jutsu. Only a handful of the shinobi connected to the chakra transmission array, those with strong chakra reserves, was able to keep it going for a time, but the rest all suffered terrible side effects. Because the essence of chakra is the fusion of spiritual and physical energy, shinobi can draw out more chakra at the cost of overdrawing vitality and overconsumption of spiritual energy, which is why continuously extracting chakra from their bodies is equivalent to extracting their spiritual and physical energies, and death is the outcome of excessive physical and spiritual energy consumption. And so it came to pass. Plop, plop. One by one, shinobis began to falter and fall to the ground not long after the chakra transmission array began to pull out chakra without concern for the lives of the people. Some were simply fatigued, while others had succumbed to their afflictions. The expressions on the alive shinobis' faces darkened as they continued to observe the travesty right in front of their eyes, while powerless to stop it. Something's obviously not right within that cave. Kakashi, who was monitoring the chakra transmission array from afar, saw the shift and scowled. Inside the volcano, there isn't enough. There isn't enough. This is still insufficient. Need more chakra. As the ritual progressed, Danzo continued to growl like a beast in despair as he demanded more and more chakra. When Root's chief researcher saw Danzo like this, he was terrified and crouched on the ground, apologizing. Hokage-sama, this is the maximum limit. The chakra surrounding Danzo is as dense and fierce as that of a biju right now. Its concentration is so intense that it can be seen with the naked eye. The last time he saw so much chakra was during Kyuubi's attack on Konoha. But, despite the abundance of chakra surrounding him, Danzo is unsatisfied and demands more chakra like a beast. He is really terrified by this scene. "Quickly! Raise the power of the transmission array!" Danzo screamed once more. The researcher went completely still. He was at a loss for what to do. Homusubi, on the other hand, maintained a serene demeanor as she observed the events unfolding in front of her. She recognized at this point that she had seemingly forgotten a critical issue: the high chakra requirement of the Kekkei Genkai fusion ritual. Homusubi only realized now that Charka's criteria for the ceremony are far higher than all her previous expectations. Danzo's chakra reserves have increased greatly as a result of Orochimaru's transformation procedure, plus the chakra collected from over 1,500 Konoha shinobi. This is an excessive amount of chakra. This much chakra should have been more than plenty, according to Homusubi's expectations at least. However, it turns out that this isn't enough. The chakra supply was more than ample when his simple eye evolved into Sharingan, and when the pair of Sharingan in his eye sockets evolved into the Mangekyu Sharingan. However, as the chakra fusion in his body advanced, and the pair of Mangekyu Sharingan in his eyes evolved into the eternal Mangekyu Sharingan, the need for chakra escalated to a point where the chakra transmission array, which consisted of over 1,500 shinobi, couldn't keep up. And this is only the eternal Mangekyu Sharingan, which represents the yin chakra's pinnacle. The rinnegan follows, which is a merger of the yin and yang chakras, would need more chakra. After that, there's a much higher level, the union of the 7 chakra natures, known as Kekkei-mora. Obviously, this level of chakra supply will not be able to meet those standards. Homusubi's brows furrowed as she considered this. And if Homusubi is correct, Danzo won't be able to awaken Rinnegan or achieve the Kekkei-mora. She's come to one basic conclusion based on her examination of the ceremony thus far. That is, as the ritual progresses through each level, the amount of chakra required for the following level increases exponentially. When Danzo achieved the level of Eternal Mangekyu Sharingan, the demand for chakra exceeded the supply, and the possibilities of his Eternal Mangekyu Sharingan evolving into the Rinnegan were little to none. This fact also helped her realize something else. Until now, we were all mistaken. When it comes to ascending, the true challenge is not the issue of soul fusion, but rather the necessity of too much chakra, which virtually no one can obtain. As a result of her realization, Homusubi was able to let go of her anxiety. It is impossible for Danzo to achieve Keke Mora. Whether he can successfully complete the Keke Genkai absorption ritual or not is entirely dependent on his luck. Although she felt relieved after coming to this decision, she was also made aware of a severe dilemma. The chakra supply from more than 1,500 shinobi is insufficient to meet the requirement for the total fusion of yin and yang chakra. Thus, if Homusubi wants to achieve Keke Mora, she'll need tens of thousands of shinobi. The matter of chakra needs will have to be handled as well. Otherwise, achieving Keke Mora will be a pipe dream. She sighed helplessly. She returned her gaze to Danzo after the helpless sigh. Seeing Danzo's plight, Homusubi felt a little sympathy for him, regardless of how harsh his acts were at the time. Back to the ritual. When Danzo noticed the principal researcher hesitating, he did not issue an order. Instead, he established fleeting eye contact with the scientist. And then, the next thing you know, my body. The top researcher had lost control of his body after just an instant of eye contact, as the potency of chakra transmission was amplified past its maximum limit. Whoosh! Danzo's eternal Mangekyu Sharingan began to spin erratically as soon as the transmission power exceeded the maximum. Homusubi also shielded her eyes with her hand at the same time. The pair of eternal Mangekyu Sharingan in her eyes had begun to tingle for some reason she didn't fathom.